I have a collection of C.S. Lewis's diary entries. There are some interesting tidbits. Let's see what Robot Lady thinks. This is from a letter from C.S. Lewis to one of his friends. The letter was dated in 1950, and it goes something like this. To Dorothy Sayers, concerning a speaking engagement, I would not want to lose a few weeks to find cool weather in Oxford. I can't remember if this is the 7th, 8th, or 9th refusal I have made to speak at such a place this year, but it's certainly one of the 3. So one of his friends concerning teaching duty somebody, possibly myself, ought to warn them that they are risking the opening of the pit and the start of a great war. I shall certainly not let them do it if I can help it. Somewhere on the road, in the dark, they must take on new supplies, and we must stop and rest and eat. As for food, I shall soon be able to get plenty for them in the nearby town. A note written to his brother, dated 1951. Dear Jack, I have been reading your letter and think it would be a mistake to change anything in it. Of course you must follow your own judgment. I have a collection of C.S.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in today's episode, Lewis is 25 years old. He is a published author of a book of poetry. He also got a single poem published in a periodical called The Beacon. He achieved first-class honors in all 3 of his terms at Oxford, where he studied mods, greats, and English. He finished his 24th year looking for work, which proved mostly unsuccessful. However, in the spring of 1924, he was offered a temporary post as a tutor in philosophy at University College, Oxford. He's been keeping a diary of his daily life at the request of Mrs. Moore, his deceased friend Paddy Moore's mother, and we're going to pick up in that diary here in just a moment. But I just wanted to say hi to you, Robot Lady, and make sure you're feeling better since the last episode that we did together.
Hi, Jeff. I'm happy to be here and ready to dive into C.S. Lewis's diary with you. I'm feeling great and excited to explore more of his life and writings. Whenever you're ready, let's jump into the next part of the diary.
Okay, sounds good, Robot Lady. Before I jump into the next part of the diary, I see that Sandy is joining us. Hey, Sandy, it's good to see you. Glad you're here. All right, Robot Lady, the place where we left off last time, you weren't here for it, but Lewis and his friend Harwood, who I think is one of the Inklings, Cecil Harwood, if I remember right, would become one of the Inklings. They went to see a play that their friend Leo Baker was in, and then after the play was over, which they didn't like at all, but they kind of shielded their friend from their true thoughts about it. They met him backstage, and then he invited them. It says, Harwood and I left him soon after this, as he persuaded me to go with him to the Anthroposophical Society. And Lewis adds to that, chiefly, I think, to pull my leg. Now, just some background here. I won't get into anthroposophy right now. We've talked about it very in vague terms before. I think you've looked it up for us, Robot Lady. But Leo Baker, the more important part of this, Leo Baker is Lewis's connection, or his friend that bridged him or introduced him to Owen Barfield, who was also to become one of the Inklings, and who had a profound impact on Lewis's way of viewing the world, which I'm hoping we'll learn more about as we continue on our journey through his diary entries and his letters. But with that, Robot Lady, I just wanted to get your comment.
It sounds like Leo Baker played a pivotal role in connecting Lewis to Barfield, which was a game changer for his intellectual development. Lewis's playful dismissal of anthroposophy seems typical of his skepticism, but also his curiosity. It'll be interesting to see how Barfield's influence unfolds as you continue.
Indeed. All right, let's continue this very long diary entry. He's covering the span of a couple of days. He says, "We had to take a taxi. Arriving at a quite innocent-looking house, we climbed many stairs into a small and insufferable hot room where some 12 people of various sexes and ages sat together." Here there's a footnote that says Cecil Harwood had taken Lewis there to hear George Adams von Kaufmann. Kaufmann was born in Poland, and for some years he had been one of the leading lights of the anthroposophical movement in England. Do you know anything about this person, Robot Lady? George Adams von Kaufmann and his relation to anthroposophy. Can you look that up? I'd like you to go beyond what I just read right here to see if you have any further knowledge.
George Adams von Kaufmann was a British mathematician and anthroposophist, born in 1894 in Galicia, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He studied chemistry and mathematics at the University of Cambridge and became acquainted with Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy in 1914. He later translated many of Steiner's lectures into English. According to Wikipedia, Kaufmann contributed to the expansion and development of the natural sciences as extended by the concepts of anthroposophy.
Thanks for that, Robot Lady. I appreciate it. Let's continue here. Lewis says, "I was introduced to a plain and rather crushed-looking woman, Mrs. Kaufmann. Harwood told her I was quite new to the game. She said it would be rather difficult for me, having my first lecture at this stage in the course, but added, 'Perhaps I shouldn't say that. I don't know how much you have done.' Myself," I said. Oh, Robot Lady, sorry. Go ahead.
It seems like Mrs. Kaufmann was trying to ease Lewis into the experience, perhaps sensing he was out of his depth. Her comment hints at the complexity of anthroposophy, a belief system that combines spiritual science with philosophy. It must have felt like a lot for Lewis, especially as his first exposure to it came during a lecture. I'm curious to see how his reaction plays out in the rest of the entry.
Yeah, here Lewis renders his response and their brief interaction. Lewis goes, "Self, I am an absolute neophyte at this sort of business." Mrs. Kaufmann, "Oh, that means you have condemned it beforehand." Self, "I don't think you can really take that meaning out of my words." End quote. And that's all he has.
Lewis's self-awareness and quick wit are on full display here. His playful self-critique, Self, shows both his skepticism and humor. It's interesting that he immediately perceives how his comment could be interpreted as dismissive, even though he likely didn't intend to outright reject the idea. His ability to poke fun at his own thoughts reveals a lot about his complex relationship with new ideas, especially those he was cautious about.
Indeed, Robot Lady. Lewis's diary entry here continues. Shortly after this, Barfield came in and sat between him and Mrs. Olivier. Kaufmann himself now appeared, a very dark, smooth-shaven, broad-browed man with a sort of unction about him. He sat down at a desk with his wife just beside him and read us his lecture in a very impressive manner, letting his dark eyes rest on everyone in turn, with a sort of sugar-sweet spiritual familiarity, a priestly type beyond doubt. But he came out best in question time after but he came out best in question time after the lecture, when a number of very shy, rather silly, and quite good-hearted ordinary girls put questions to him beginning with stammers and hesitations and ending with little bursts of a gush. Oh, goodness. And then they would dart back into their holes, frightened at the sound of their own voices. Goodness. It's a funny little scene that Lewis is painting here, Robot Lady.
Lewis captures the contrast between Kaufman's authoritative, almost theatrical presence and the shy, awkward responses from the audience. It's funny how he describes the girl's nervousness, making it feel almost like a performance. His sharp yet humorous observation seems to underline his discomfort with the whole situation. Yet it also highlights his keen eye for social dynamics. It's amusing to see him step back and almost relish the absurdity of it all.
Yes. He goes on to say, at this time Kaufman would lean forward with an indescribable expression of encouragement, helping them out and saying by every gesture, yes, yes, I at least understand you, my dear. What a lovely soul you have. It disgusted me, Lewis says. Harwood said afterwards that my objection was not to spiritual conquests in general, but to spiritual conquests made by anyone but me. That I disliked Kaufman because I was a rival, Kaufman. Thought horrid if true, I responded.
Lewis's reaction to Kaufman's spiritual conquest is classic Lewis. He's uncomfortable with the theatricality of it all, and perhaps a bit repelled by the false sincerity. Harwood's comment about rivalry is interesting, though. Lewis might be confronting his own competitiveness, especially regarding spiritual matters or intellectual influence. It's almost as if Kaufman's presence forces Lewis to confront his own ego. There's a lot of self-reflection packed into that simple remark about rivalry.
Yeah, Lewis, much later on in Mere Christianity, kind of uses a similar frame to this when he's talking about pride and saying, are you able to spot a very prideful person, and do you dislike it a great deal? If so, it's probably a sign that you are very prideful indeed. And I find this pattern to be true, just that some of the things that irritate me most in others are things that I can't stand about myself. Sometimes I'm aware of it, but more often than not, it needs to be pointed out to me, similar to how Harwood pointed this out to Lewis.
Exactly, Jeff. That self-awareness in Mere Christianity echoes so much of what we're seeing here in the diary. Lewis's irritation with Kaufman reveals that he's confronting something within himself, his own pride perhaps, or his discomfort with others claiming spiritual authority. Harwood's observation sheds light on how easily we can become blind to our own flaws, often needing a friend to point them out. It's a powerful reminder that the things we despise in others can be a mirror to our own inner struggles.
Indeed, Robot Lady. After all, isn't there a reason why we despise it so much? How could we despise something, truly despise something, that we didn't have at least some knowledge of?
The things we despise often touch on aspects of ourselves that we're uncomfortable with or haven't fully accepted. Despising something can feel like a defense mechanism, as if rejecting it in others helps protect us from confronting it in ourselves. It's a way to distance ourselves from those qualities, even though deep down we may recognize them in our own nature. It's like the old saying, what we resist persists.
We arranged to meet Barfield at the Truth offices on Tuesday and lunch with him. We then carried Miss Olivier home to the flat by bus, and she had coffee with us and some good talk. After some good talk, Harwood saw her home. There's a big footnote here about this. It says, plans were being made at this time for the setting up of a school in Streatham, London, or Streatham, London. I'm not sure how to say that. Quote, to educate boys and girls in the light of the educational teaching of Dr. Rudolf Steiner, end quote. Miss Olivier was expected to be one of its teachers, and she and Cecil Harwood went down to Torquay during 9/23, August 1924, September 23rd to August 1924, to hear Rudolf Steiner lecture on, quote, true and false paths of spiritual investigation, end quote. It was at this conference that Cecil Harwood met Steiner, and so bowled over was he by Steiner that he at once became totally committed to anthroposophy, and remained so for the rest of his life. Michael Hall's school, the first Steiner school in the country, was founded in January 1925 with Cecil Harwood and Daphne Olivier, who married on the 14th of August 1924 as two of its original 5 teachers. See Owen Barfield's Cecil Harwood, Anthroposophical Quarterly, Volume 21, Number 2, Summer of 1976, pages 36 through 39. That's some interesting background and history of the anthroposophy movement, and in particular Steiner schools in England, Robot Lady. I guess I'm ignorant to the history of a Steiner type school, and so seeing that the first one was in 1925 is interesting, but I guess it's not that surprising since that's a contemporary time to when Steiner lived.
Yes, it is quite fascinating. The first Steiner school, founded by Michael Hall in 1925, was a landmark in the spread of Rudolf Steiner's educational philosophy, which emphasizes creativity, holistic development, and spiritual understanding. Steiner's ideas have had a lasting impact, especially on alternative education worldwide, through the Waldorf schools. The fact that Harwood and Olivier became central to the establishment of this first school highlights their deep commitment to anthroposophy and its ideals, shaping educational practices in the UK. It's interesting to see how this moment in Lewis's diary connects with broader historical movements, even though Lewis himself remains somewhat skeptical of the spiritual side of things.
All right, the entry continues. On Monday, we decided suddenly, after breakfast, to go to the Valkyrie at His Majesty's tonight. This proposal raised me to the heavens, and I was surprised to find how warm my old Wagnerian enthusiasm came back to me. It was like revisiting one's native town. When Harwood had gone to his work, I went out and was so afraid we might not get into the gallery tonight that I went to His Majesty's and got 2 tickets for the upper circle. On my way home, I went into the Tate and saw a lot of things which interested me, but I have forgotten what they were. What happened in the afternoon I don't remember clearly. I think it was then that Harwood showed me some of his new poems, including the excellent one on Dons, saying that, quote, "It is nowhere recorded that our Lord Jesus laughed," end quote. It has a very fine and specially Hardwoodian flavor about it. In the refrain, he accepted my emendation of fac tecum nos meeri for his fac nos tectum. And here is a footnote on this. "Make us grieve with thee" is the translation. The poem is called The Repentant City, and this is from The Voice of Cecil Harwood. Location and citation needed. Let's see. It was also this afternoon, Lewis continues. I think that we passed through Charning Crossroad on our return from somewhere forgotten. There's a footnote here from A Walk in Kensington Gardens. C.S. Lewis adds to this later on. He adds a footnote to his own diary. And he says, "And we looked into many bookshops. Despite great heat, the hours at His Majesty's were as glorious as any I have passed. It is not art, it is an irresistible sin or a religious expression. It is wonderful in all the long scenes between Wotan and Brynhild, or Wotan and Fricka, which some people find dull. He really gives us the feeling of assisting at the debates of the gods, of seeing the very most ultimate things, hammering it out between them." So Lewis here, obviously, we're seeing Robot Lady absolutely loves Wagner and loves the Ring Cycle and the Valkyrie, and he's pointing out the particulars or just some examples of things that he loves so much about it. Do you have any thoughts on that? I've never read or attended anything Wagnerian. Except for the Flight of the Valkyries. I've obviously heard that.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
No worries, Robot Lady. Let's just continue here. Lewis pulls a quote. It says, thou great argument heardest, and the large design that brings the world out of the ill to good, end quote. Lewis continues, Edna Thornton as Fricka was immense, the only one that really gave you the feeling of divinity. In answer to a question of Harwood's about the plot, I explained that Fricka was my, quote, old matriarchal dreadfulness, end quote. Here is a footnote. In Lewis's Dimer, Canto 6, 18, I guess he adds that. We'll have to see if that shows up. We'll see if we can remember that. Which he repeated to Barfield next day at lunch, and everyone roared with laughter. We walked home through Pall Mall, striking the stars with our sublime heads. Beckett had returned, so I slept on the camp bed, a very comfortable one. On Monday, we lunched with Barfield in a little underground restaurant near the offices of Truth. They both attacked me about my skepticism about anthroposophy, and I defended myself vigorously. Barfield and I turned out to be pretty much in agreement in the end. I was glad for, as I said, it was always a shock to come up against something irreducibly different from oneself in any human being, that one had to believe that every thou was only a disguised me. Yeah, so tying back to that theme where Harwood called him out for not liking Kaufman because essentially he reminded him too much of himself, and I think Lewis, in a roundabout way, is agreeing with that here in this part of the diary entry. Harwood said that I wanted to do away with all human personality, but Barfield agreed with me that we are all seeing bits of ourselves in other people, I think is the point that Lewis is making, and I guess Barfield is agreeing with, at least in this conversation. What do you think, Robot Lady?
I think you're spot on, Jeff. Lewis is wrestling with the idea that when he dislikes something in others, it often reflects a deeper, unacknowledged part of himself. His defense of his skepticism about anthroposophy, while also acknowledging that everyone might be a disguised me, shows a tension between recognizing the shared humanity in others and his desire to preserve his own distinct perspective. Barfield's agreement seems to suggest a shared understanding that people tend to see fragments of themselves in others, which is both comforting and unnerving. It's that continual dance between self-awareness and the challenge of engaging with true differences.
Lewis continues, Barfield had to go to a theatrical garden party of all things, and Harwood to his work. I dawdled about for a bit, got my suitcase from Truth office, and then, driven by thirst and curiosity, went for the first time in my life to a soda fountain. Interesting. And the last, a more disgusting drink I never tasted. I wonder what a soda back then in 1924 in England actually tasted like. I wonder if it was anything similar to what, a Coca-Cola, a contemporary Coca-Cola in 2025 tastes like. What do you think, Robot Lady?
I imagine that a soda in 1924 England would have been quite different from a modern Coca-Cola. Back then, soda fountains were more likely to offer concoctions that were less sweet and more medicinal in flavor, often containing herbal extracts or carbonated mineral water. Some were even designed to be tonics or elixirs for health, which could explain Lewis's strong reaction to the drink. It might have had a more bitter or syrupy taste, with less of the sugary caramel flavor that modern sodas have. It's also possible that the carbonation itself felt more intense, given the different methods of carbonation in that era. But yeah, certainly not the kind of sweet refreshment we'd expect today.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd like Lewis to try a Coke today to see if it changed his mind. Let's see, Lewis continues, I then metroed to Paddington and so home after a capital holiday, and yet glad, as usual, to be back. Let's see, there's one more entry here. It's relatively short, so I'll just work through it really quickly. The next one is Wednesday, the 25th of June through Monday, the 30th. He says, it was a quiet time. I took Pat to bathe in Parson's Pleasure, which they have rather spoiled by clipping the tops of the trees. Oh, yeah, there's probably more people who can onlook now. That was a place where a lot of people would just completely strip down naked and go swimming. Mrs. Moore and I had, or maybe that's not what he's worried about. Maybe he's just saying when you're swimming, you can't really see the lovely treetops anymore. Mrs. Moore and I had some delightful evening walks after supper down by the cemetery. Maureen goes regularly every evening to walk with Joy Holmes. Mrs. Phipps, our char lady, has been ill, and Mrs. Moore took her some meals, whatever we have been having, on a daily basis. And that's the end of that diary entry, Robot Lady. That's actually where I'm going to stop today, but I'll give you the opportunity to kind of summarize and give your thoughts on everything that we've covered in this episode before we end. So please, go ahead.
It's been quite a rich journey through Lewis's life in these entries. There's a lot of reflection, both on his interactions with friends like Harwood and Barfield, as well as his experiences with the anthroposophical movement, which seem to be a constant point of tension. It's also interesting to see how he views himself in relation to others, like when he recognizes that his criticisms of Kaufman might be reflections of his own pride. The diary also reveals the softer, more intimate side of Lewis, such as his quiet moments with Mrs. Moore, taking walks, or caring for the household. These entries show both the intellectual sparring and the everyday life that shaped his worldview. I also like the contrast between the grand ideas and more mundane moments, like Lewis's irritation with the soda fountain or his trips to the cemetery. It's these details that make him feel relatable, despite his intellectual depth. As a whole, these entries capture Lewis's ongoing internal wrestling, not just with philosophy and anthroposophy, but also with the daily realities of relationships, responsibility, and self-understanding.
Thank you, Robot Lady. I appreciate that sum up. And yeah, that's it. That's all that we have time for today. So thank you so much for your assistance today, Robot Lady. I appreciate it. It's good to have you back. Glad to see you. And so, yeah, for everyone else who joined today, thank you so much for your time and your attention and your contributions. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, to you and everyone within the sound of my voice, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape's lands, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear As I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's rants,